Good morning, everybody. I am Mike with Obviously Outdoorsmen. You already know I'm drinking my Black Rifle Coffee Gunship to start off my morning. I am getting caffeinated. I'm still unvaccinated, and I am a New Jersey native at heart, which means today's topic: catching more trout, how to catch more trout, tips to catch more trout, where to find them, what to use, how to increase your chances at finding trout. But if this is your first time to the First Light Talks, then you guys know I like to start this off with a current news article. And today's article is Idaho's Wolf Control Board will have $1 million to kill wolves this year. Okay, recently the population of Idaho's wolves is estimated to be around 1,500 wolves. All right, state officials are requesting $392,000 from the general fund to kill wolves in Idaho. And with certain other revenue sources, they will have just over $1 million combined. All right, alongside the general fund money, the Wolf Depredation Control Board will receive $300,000 from Fish and Game and $110,000 from livestock producers. All right, the big push to keep the wolf population in check is the massive effect wolves are having on livestock. Increased numbers of cattle are being killed, and constant harassment by the wolves to the cattle. All right, recent hunting laws made it so that there are multiple methods to harvest one wolf on a given tag, including trapping and snaring, and on a single tag you can do all these things, whether it's bow and arrow, rifle, trap, or snare, all on one tag. And they also implemented new laws for wolf hunting in Idaho, where there will be no restriction on hunting hours. So 24 hours you can hunt wolves. You're allowed to use night vision with a permit. You're allowed to bait. Dogs are being allowed to hunt with wolves, to hunt for wolves, and allowing hunting from a vehicle, a moving motorized vehicle, is allowed to hunt wolves now. All right, the big push for wolf hunting and keeping them around there, or 74 to 30, right around there. So the wolf population is increasing, and the amount that were harvested went down by at least 50% or more. So the wolf population is starting to boom over in Idaho, and it's going to be a big effect on the livestock and just human interaction. It's the same thing with like New Jersey bears. The hunt is stopped for now, and the more population that the bears will have to reproduce, then the more bears there are, the more interaction there's going to be with like people's pets, people in general. There's going to be more car accidents, and there's going to be more nuisance bears and more just interactions in general. Right? If there's no predator and there's nothing really killing them, then they are just going to start being like squirrels. All right? They're going to be everywhere. No matter what you do, especially if you live in like North Jersey or places in New York or PA, there's bears everywhere. And the bears aren't stupid. They know when it's garbage night. They will just go around and knock over and rummage through everyone's garbage just to get a little snack. That's what they are. They're scavengers and they're hunters. So if they can't hunt for food, let's say it's winter and there's 2 feet of snow on the ground, they know Sunday's garbage night. They're going to go around through the neighborhood and get plenty of food going through garbage bags. So you got to keep the population under control if you haven't learned that by now. And this is just a big problem with wolves out west, whether it's Yellowstone, Idaho, Montana. The wolf number's got to be kept in check. And these anti-hunters do not want that, so they're trying to implement new laws. But this is one of the more hunting-imposed law that I've seen so far on the wolves, and this is a good thing. And I'm not too much for like the state controlling populations on animals. I'd rather have the overall population of like a state or just the human population go out if they want to go harvest a wolf. Make a tag optional and let people come in and hunt wolves. Let that profit and revenue generate more conservation and studying and researching just for wolves, and maybe relocating and that aspect. Don't leave it up to the state, because if you leave it up to the state, then they're going to do things like helicopter hunting, let's say in Florida or Texas with the hog problem. They're going to start implementing more of that kind of control versus actually letting citizens control the population. Just give them a tag, let them go out, let them fill their freezer, and let them just hunt. So just try and keep that in mind. And if this may be optional for hunters to go out there from out of state, well, I don't know how much the tags are, but maybe look into that if you're looking into killing wolves, because Idaho definitely wants the population under control. But let's get into the topic. All right, have more trout fishing success. And this is really based on New Jersey, PA, but these tactics work all across the country for trout. You find the same patterns, you go out there, and you're just going to absolutely demolish the trout. I've had days where I go out there, especially opening days, like after they've been pre-stocking to the season, like for 4 or 5 weeks, and the trout haven't seen a lure yet. Oh my God, I've had days where I just sit in one spot and I could pull 60 trout out of one hole in 2 hours. And sometimes it's not even 2 hours. Sometimes I could just pull that out in an hour, and it's just insane. Every single cast, you get 3 to 4 hits and you hook one. It's honestly astonishing, and I love it when I'm standing there and I am the only one doing very well, right? The problem with trout fishing now, a lot of people still have the old mindset where it's like throw salmon eggs or power bait or corn. They're only bait fishing. And if you want to be the most productive, put the bait down, all right? Pull the bait out when it gets really tough and you can't catch a fish on any type of artificial lure. So, and in my opinion, I think the artificial works way, way better than any of the bait. You might get a kicker here and there on bait to where it's just an absolute monster if you're throwing like a shiner or something like that, or a giant night crawler and they just want to eat meat versus an artificial. But if you're talking numbers games, and not even number games, I've caught giants on trout on artificial. So just hear me out on this podcast right now, okay? I'm going to go over the best lures first, in my opinion, for lures. So really, the 3 that come to mind when you're talking about trout fishing, it's going to be like a spinner, a jerkbait, and I saved the best for last, and this is my personal favorite, and it works everywhere on any trout. I don't care if it's a brown trout, a rainbow trout, a brook trout, a golden trout, no matter what it is. The micro jig is the secret to trout fishing, and I can't believe I'm putting this out there for everyone, because people know about this. And it's very popularized. You can go anywhere and buy these things, but people don't know how to use them. And if they tried them, they probably used it wrong. So they put them away and they go back to like power bait fishing. So hear me out on how to work these baits, and you're going to be a believer this trout season. All right, let's start off with spinners. So just switch up on different colors depending on how the bite is. If they're very, very active, and you can just throw a spinner out there, get them to just react to it and just absolutely murk them on spinners. I've had great days on spinners where I don't even have to pull out a micro jig, where it's just one after another. You're able to cast a spinner a country mile depending on the size of a spinner, and it works very well. If they're looking for more of a flashy style bait and not so much of a little jig or a jerk bait, then a spinner is the way to go. All right, my personal favorites are a gold spinner, the red in the tail. So if you have like red deer hair or like a marabou tied on the treble hook on the back of the spinner, that works very well. But gold, silver, chrome, blue, and like that neon green with like flashes in that off that treble hook, it's very great if you want to just go out there with a couple spinners, have a box of spinners, and you can do very well with just that. You don't even have to bring out anything else. Keep your pack light. Your back won't hurt at the end of the day because your trout vest is like 45 pounds. Right? Just put a box of spinners in there and you'd be good to go. But when they don't want spinners, that's where the micro jig comes in. When it's opening day of trout and the trout hasn't seen a bait all year yet, then you can basically throw anything and get them to bite. They're hatchery dummies, and it's easy to catch these fish. So next on the best lures list for trout would be a jerkbait. And I'm talking not giant jerkbaits, obviously, not for like bass fishing. I'm talking like 1 to 2 inch jerkbaits. You're going to catch more trout on them. Have thrown like 5-6 inch jerkbaits, and I have caught tiger trout on them. I've caught rainbows on them. They definitely work, but you're going to get less bites because it's a bigger bait, and they don't really eat giant baits depending on the size of the trout. If we're talking about stockies, so from like 12 to 20 inch stockies, then they're really eating smaller baits. You're not going to catch one on like a massive jerk bait. So, but you know what? I can't say that completely because I did catch a like 16-inch tiger trout on a KVD medium diver jerk bait. It was like 6 inches, and he just demolished it. Tiger trout are more aggressive, so they will attack stuff like that. But jerk baits, they're very good. 1 to 2 inch jerk bait. They don't cast as far depending on the weight of the jerk bait. But if it's a shallow river or stream, or even if you got a nice lake, if we're talking Jersey, we're talking like Round Valley, Spruce Run, stuff like that, a nice reservoir, you throw this stuff and you start reeling slow, and then you just pop your rod. And so the jerk bait's going to stop. You jerk that rod hard. The jerk bait's going to move probably about a foot and dive right or dive left and just come to another complete stop. And it's just going to entice these fish to just come out and just annihilate it. If we're talking about golden trout are one of the most aggressive trout there are, next to tiger trout, in my opinion. And they are a picky fish, but they are aggressive. You find the right color pattern and you just keep casting at them. So I've casted at golden trout like 9,000 times, and they will follow it. Once you get them to turn and follow, I know that it's a catchable fish. If I ever see them like flash their mouth and I could see the white of their gums, or if they turn and just show any interest in the bait, I don't care if it's 1% interest, I know that fish is interested in eating. You just gotta find what that fish wants to eat. So I'll be throwing a micro jig at a golden trout, and I will go through every color of the rainbow and then some. I will throw yellow, orange, white, red, gold, no matter what it is, and you just gotta cast perfectly in front of them. They will move a far way, but if you drop a micro jig in a golden trout's face and it's the color they want, it's over, because they don't have a long attention span, so they'll follow it, and then if they don't like it, they're going to make a quick decision and then just keep swimming. So you just hit them with that perfect color. I think it's like 1 to 2 casts. You take one to two good casts to where he could definitely see the bait, and then if he shows any interest, cast back a couple times, see if he will just come up and slurp it in. But if he shows any interest, I'll switch to another color right away. Make sure that first cast, that's the most essential cast. If you switch colors and he hasn't seen that color yet, and you make a great cast on him, I guarantee you he's going to come up and just slurp it. It's just how it works. But if you make a like subpar cast where you're casting like 5 feet in front of the fish and it's got to move a little bit to go get it, it might not hit it. So you want to make sure, if you're casting in a river, cast like 2 feet in front of that fish, let the current bring that bait right in front of his face, pop that jig a little bit, or jerk bait, just slap it, and it'll just come up and just whack it. This is how it works. All right, so jerk baits can be a great method to use right there. But lastly, my most favorite trout bait, the micro jig. So it's a very simple bait, and I guarantee you, if you guys are pan fishermen, you already have what you need. All right, a micro jig, it's a 132 ounce jig head. It's the smallest jig head you have. And depending on where you are, if you're fishing deeper, if you got to cast super far like a lake, maybe you could bump up to like a 1/16 ounce jig head. But I'd rather go a 132 ounce jig head, throw some weight up top, split shots, maybe 2 feet up, and cast that out. That size of a micro jig, it says it right in the name, micro. And I'd rather work that with extra weight up top or on a bobber with weight, no matter how it works. I'd rather work it on the smaller jig head. And then for the body of the jig head, then you're just using like a 1-inch grub or a 1-inch minnow imitation. My personal favorites, all right, the Trout Magnet and Gulp. Yes, Gulp makes trout baits. They make tiny little minnow imitations, and they are deadly. When I say deadly, I mean deadly. All right, so they're just very deadly. And you can buy the Trout Magnet basically at any sporting goods store. As long as they sell fishing stuff and they sell some type of trout stuff, they're probably going to have trout magnets. I do not prefer, and I highly don't suggest, using the Trout Magnet jig head. It's a weak hook, and I've had big trout. I'm talking like 8-10 pound trout, rainbow trout, just snap that hook in half, because they love to do that alligator roll. The rainbow trout will just get hooked and they will just roll and they snap that trout magnet hook if it's a big fish. I do not suggest it. Find a good little 132 ounce jig head hook that's strong and sturdy to where if you hook a fish, it's not going to bend out. And one of my personal favorites for weight or sturdiness, just effectiveness, is the Freaky Frank's custom tackle jig head. The smallest jig head they have. That is a very strong shank and a curve in the hook. And that's one of the strongest ones. They do respond differently because the jig heads are normally colored, whether it's white, black, green, chartreuse, yellow. I prefer just using like the little gray, bland, the way it looks like a split shot on the jig head with just a hook on it. So the black Freaky Frank, smallest 132 ounce jig head. If you're going to use Freaky Franks, use that jig head, the black one. You could try the yellow. That's the only other one I really try and go with if I'm using the Freaky Frank jig head. But if you could just find the normal, like the way it looks like a split shot, just a little bit of lead with a hook, that's my personal favorite. They're a little bit weaker in the shank, but I've landed big trout on them and I do trust them. So you're just using that. And reason I like trout magnet so much, it looks like a mealworm. They love mealworms. It's a slender bait, it's tiny, and it's a quick snack for them. They will come up and just eat it. And there's a million colors in the trout magnet. They have white, gold, black, pink, yellow, green, blue, red. You pick any color, I guarantee you they have it. And then you could even switch away from just the trout magnet. You get a little bit beefier and go to the crappie magnet. It's the same style, just a little bit beefier. And that not only does well for crappie, it says it in the name, the crappie magnet. I have shredded on the crappie magnet for crappie. But you beef it up, especially if you're dealing with bigger rainbows and you work it right, I guarantee you're probably going to catch a bunch of big fish. But Gulp, if we're talking about the Gulp style body for that same jig head I was talking about before, they have little minnow imitations. I can't think of the colors off the top of my head, but it's just a very short 1 inch or 2 inch. I think it's like a 1 inch. It's very small. And just the feel of it is very soft and the action is incredible on it. You want to go natural, so like just a silver chrome back, or I like going with the chartreuse. It's a chartreuse back all the way through the tail with like a white belly or a gray belly, and you rig that on that little gray jig head, and oh my god, the amount of fish that annihilate it is just insane. All right, I do prefer, if you're catching a ton of stocky size trout, no giants, then I like going to the trout magnet because they are a little more durable versus the Gulp. But if you just have a monster that you could see and it's avoiding everything else, if you float a Gulp down in there just right, because it's like a little pin minnow, you drop it right in its face and they love it, especially dealing with brown trout. Oh, you're going to have a fun day if you pick that guy up. So I said, and I just referenced, if you can see a giant, guys, if you guys are fishing and you guys don't have polarized shades yet, get in the game, please. I can't tell you how many times these older folks or just anyone on the river doesn't have polarized shades. It is sometimes the key to the bite, because I love watching the fish eat because I know how to work the bait. Put on polarized shades, and if you're dealing with freshwater, you want to go with the more like orange tint to the polarized shades. I think it's called like iridium. I think that's like the color style for it, but it's in like an orange tint and a little bit brighter of the lens. Make sure it's not super dark, because that orange, I feel it works much better for freshwater, and the blue tints are much better for saltwater when it comes to polarized lenses for sunglasses. So you pick them up. I've gone out on opening days. If there's 40 people on the bank, I've seen like 30 people without sunglasses. And it's like, why? You don't even know what's in the hole, what you're casting at. I understand you should still be able to catch fish. But when I could see that there's an 8-pounder sitting on the bottom in the back of the hole, and there's 200 little trout in between me and that fish, I know it's going to be a long day getting to that big fish because there's so many trout in between. And I will rip the bait away from the small trout just to be able to get a chance at the drift down to that big trout. And I've had people come up to me and tell me that because I'm keep casting in the same spot at the same fish, that I'm trying to like snag it and it's not fishing. Guys, it's sunglasses. Just because I could see the fish doesn't mean it's not like ideal. That's the perfect situation. You could see the fish, you can see how it reacts to every single bait that you throw at it. All right, I could throw a spinner at this fish and it turn and boogie away from it like it doesn't want to be anywhere near it, and I know to put that spinner down. I pull out a micro jig in like a gold color. I see it, chase it, follow it up, but then it turns the last second and smacks his mouth. And I go, okay, he wants it. He's going to eat. And then I will go through the color variations of the trout magnet. And my personal favorites are gold, pink, and yellow for trout magnets. They are the best in my opinion. You go through them three and you're going to catch 90% of the fish. But if I go through them three and I know he don't want it, I will leave that fish alone and rest for like a minute or two so it doesn't get a line past his face. I will put one of them Gulp minnows on, float it in his face, and there's a certain technique with micro jigs that you have to learn in order to fish them. Right? You could throw them on bigger rods, but you want to go with an ultralight rod that's kind of stiff. Pretty stiff is the key. You don't want like a wobbly rod like a pool noodle. You want to be able to feel that action, like twitch, 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 and then you feel like a dunk. And sometimes with these lighter jigs, it's hard to feel the bite. That's why Polarized Shades is key. Watch your bait the whole time, and you're going to see him come up and just slurp it in and go to turn, and you got to hook him. It's quick. It's very quick, but it's very, very effective. So instead of just casting the jig out there, it's called a jig for a reason. Jig the damn bait. I have gotten people on these baits and they're like, they don't work. And I'm like, yeah, twitch your rod a couple times. Whack. Oh, they work. You cast it out there in front of the whole school of fish or in front of the fish that you see in the water because you're wearing the polarized shades. Remember that. You cast in front of the school of trout. Let the current take it down to them, and then you are just rapidly twitching your rod. Rapidly twitching, and then you're like half turning your reel with the current depending on how fast the current is. If it's like a slow to medium current, you are like half turning to one turning every time you make like 3 twitches, and it's very quick. It's like rapid motions, and these fish love it, and they will turn on it. They will turn, follow it, and then go really quick and suck it in, and then that's when you hook them. And then if you ever have a fish chase it when you're throwing a micro jig, I guarantee you that fish will bite. Just get the right drift on them with the right twitch. A lot of times when I'm twitching at a trout and I see it following it, I see it turn out of the current and go to follow the jig, and it looks like it's going to stop coming for it. As soon as that fish is almost to my jig, I stop twitching and I let the jig sink back down right into the fish, and it will slurp it up. So twitch, 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 here comes the fish, kill the bait, and then he whacks it. So please give the micro jig a try. I normally throw it on like a 5-foot ultralight rod, a small reel. I throw it on 6 to 8 pound test because I sometimes I go to 10 pound. If I know I'm dealing with bigger trout, I will either throw 8 or 10 pound. I will never go heavier than that for trout, but if I know there may be a chance at a big one, then I'm going to stick between 6 and 8 pounds. But if I know that there's big fish there, I'll stick to 8 pounds normally. Because sometimes if they are really line shy from being casted at 2,000 times, then that 6 pound, you're just going to have to work them right, make sure your drag is set right to be able to get them. So where do you want to look for these trout? All right, if you go to any lake, river, or stream, I don't care where it is, but we're going to start with lake. Lakes are a little harder to pattern these fish, so you want to look for structure first off. And depending if they're stock trout or trout that's been in there, like holdover trout for a year or two, depending on how long they've been there, if they are stock trout, they are going to be generally in that same area where they were just thrown in that lake. They're going to be very close. And if they are holdover trout, then you got to play the seasons again. You got to go through spring, summer, fall, depending on how it is. So you want to look for rock walls, deep spots, current, and the best way to find out where the trout are, look for rising fish, like whether they're rising on flies or little crustaceans or moths, and they're just, even if they're just surfacing the water just because, whether it's tiny parasites, whatever they're eating, or if they just want to show themselves and breach the water, look for that. Because most of the time, if it's a trout stock lake and you know there's trout in there, what's rising is the trout and they are feeding. So you go over there with a micro jig and you just cast out. Depending on how far out they are, you might have to switch to a spinner just to even get to them if they're too far out. So that's why I always carry spinners, jerk baits, and micro jigs. Sometimes I do carry power bait. Just if I have a crap day and they're not eating anything artificial, I will just sink a power bait out there and just let it soak, and maybe I just want to relax. So power bait in lakes sometimes is a better move versus rivers. If you are at a lake, maybe put out 2 rods with power bait just sitting out there, because they're like kicker fish at that point. You're working an artificial jig and you have two rods with power bait out there. And the way I rig power bait when I do use it, I use a tiny hook, maybe a size 10 or 12. I love the bait holder hooks. It's like 2 barbs on the back of the hook, so it keeps the bait on there. And then I'll run between 14 and 16 inches from the hook. I'll run a couple split shots. Or if I'm just bait fishing, then with power bait, then I will run a swivel to a sliding weight. So that way I will put my drag on the lightest setting. And then when that drag starts screaming, then I will run up to it, tighten my drag, set the hook, and there it is. And just be careful with power bait that if they swallow the hook, don't try digging it out. And if you don't want to keep it, don't try digging the hook out. Just cut the line as deep as possible and let them go. That's their best chance for survival. But if you're using this technique, please try and keep the trout if it just swallows your bait hole and the hook is already being digested because you let it sit too long. That's why I don't really like power bait. So if you're in a lake, look for structure. But if they're stocked, they're probably going to be within that same general area. And if you are able to get there very soon to when that stocking truck throws them fish in, if you get there right away, normally there's a frenzy like right away. So it's either a frenzy or they shut down and they're getting adjusted to the water. As soon as they get thrown in, then throw a spinner at them. They're going to be close if you're in a lake. Throw a spinner at them and you can probably pick off a couple trout. Otherwise, wait till like 5 o'clock that night, or just wait a couple hours afterwards once they get acclimated to the water, and you can just have a slamming day on lake stock trout because they got acclimated and they're still hanging out right where they were thrown into the lake. So they're all in the same area. Throw some power bait out there, work a jig, work a lure, no matter what it is, and you could have a great time. Just find the right color. If you guys are searching a river or stream looking for trout, all right, if it's fast water or slow water, so slow moving eddies, that's one of the best times to get out there for them. But a lot of times if they are stocked rivers and they just throw the fish in and there's no rainfall, they're going to be, again, generally close to where they are immediately stocked. So probably within 50 to 100 yards of where they stock. And you could find where they stock. Just go on websites, go on the state website, whatever state you're in. They will say, this is where it's stocked. On this bridge, off this road, they will tell you where it is. And then just work within 100 yards of each section, or each way of where it's stocked, north or south, and you'll find fish. I guarantee you there will be fish there. Unless there's a heavy hurricane rain to where the river goes up like 5 feet, then you got to go downstream and you got to work a little more for them. But if you're in a river, if you got really fast rapids and then you get a pocket to where it's just slow moving water, and that really fast rapids is trickling out into just slow moving water out of that fast water, there's going to be trout right on that transition, right out of the fast water into that slow water, whether if there's a log down there or against a steep bank, or if you got gravel that just has a little like trough in it, they'll be laying right there waiting for the food to come out of the fast water and just pick off that bait. So work the edges, and a lot of times in that fast water, and this is a great tip if you're steelhead fishing as well, whether you're in New York or where you are, if you got fast water and you got a big rock right in the middle, a boulder, and you could tell that the current is going the other way in that little spot behind the rock. You got super fast water, you got a big rock, and then right behind it is a slow spot. It's a calm in the storm. That's where they're going to be. They're going to be sitting in there waiting for bait or flies or minnows to come out of that fast water, get caught in that little whirlpool eddy behind that big rock, then they just pick them off. So if you cast right into that little bit of eddy in that fast water, you will probably get a fish, because they want to be in current, but they want to be in the best spot to get the most amount of food. So that's where they're going to be. Right behind that big rock is going to be the easiest spot for them to not exert as much energy as being in that fast water. Obviously, they would die if they only lived in that rapid water and they had to move 1,000 times a second. They could be in that, behind that big rock, in that eddy, and that's where the fish is going to be. But look for cover if you're on rivers as well, whether it's a big down tree and that's the current break, and there's a slow pocket behind that where the bait is just like circulating in there. There's going to be big fish in there. If there's a big stretch of slow moving or barely moving water, a lot of times that's one of the best times to throw a dry fly or a nymph. You will always see fish rising in there depending on the time of year. They will be coming up after the gnats, the mosquitoes, the mayflies. That's one of the best times to do it, in that slow moving water for the dry fly action. But that's where you can throw a jig. If you throw a heavy spinner into like that slow moving water, sometimes it may spook the fish. So maybe you go lighter with the jig instead of the spinner, and then just work it slow, and you will probably catch fish in there as well. But find the fish. Polarized shades are a must for it. And a lot of times, just make sure it's a sunny day. And even on the cloudy days, that's when that orange lens of your sunglasses will shine. Because if you are wearing like the $15 BS sunglasses from like a gas station, and they're dark blue tinted, but they say they're polarized, if it's a cloudy day, you're screwed. But if you spend a little bit of money, and one of the best ones I found for like an affordable price, it's a Strike King S11 sunglasses. And I'll say that again, Strike King S11 sunglasses. You can find them on Tackle Warehouse and a couple different places. And if you go, I believe it's called the Iridium lens, and it's got that like yellowish orange tint to it. They are amazing for river fishing, lake fishing, or just freshwater fishing in general. You will see them very, very well. You walk along the river, you will just pick out trout, and you will just see where they are. And you could pass fish because you'll be like, okay, there's a school of like 5 decent sized trout. Then you keep walking and you're just doing scouting along the river. And then you go, oh, look, a 10-pound rainbow sitting behind this log. I'm going to cast at him instead of these 5 little ones. So polarized shades are a must. And while we are talking about trout, I want to talk about a little recipe action. If you guys are like camping, or if you want to try a new method, this is one that I have found most people generally enjoy. You take a rainbow trout and you cut the head off. You make sure it's gutted. You don't fillet it, and you clear out that poop line in the back of that inside of that trout along the spine. Clean that out, and you could either grill it or put it over like a campfire. You could do the same thing in the oven as well, but I prefer grill. And you just want to pack the inside of that fish with like a cut lemon, sliced lemon, put it in there, put some onions in there, salt and pepper the inside. You could salt and pepper the outside as well. Take a piece of tin foil and put either butter or like some vegetable oil, and just spread it over the skin of the trout and on the tin foil. Put it in there. Put some butter in there as well. You could even add garlic in there, crushed garlic, and just pack that inside with the fish with the lemon, the garlic, whatever you want to put in there. There are many recipes on it. And then you just wrap that tinfoil up around the fish, throw it on the grill or above the campfire. And then when you take it off, it's probably going to take like maybe 10 minutes each side. And then you take it off that campfire, open up that tinfoil, and if you are able to just pull the skin, like if you have a fork and you just peel that skin, it should come off effortlessly. It should come off that easy. And a lot of times people don't eat trout because of the bones, right? If you cook it this way, then the bones will just kind of just curl away from the meat. It's very easy to get the bones off of that when you cook it this way. And it just falls apart in your mouth. It tastes amazing. And I made a couple trout on a camping trip for a bunch of my buddies who really have no ideas about the outdoors. So I caught a frog and we cooked a frog and they ate it and they thought it was the most amazing thing on this planet Earth. So when I caught a trout and I cooked it up and they were like, yeah, I never really had trout, and they ate it and they thought it was like 5-star cuisine, then I guarantee you're going to like this recipe. But there's a bunch of ways to cook trout. Just do some research on it. Try some new ways, whether you smoke it or fry it or grill it. No matter, they taste pretty good depending on the trout. I believe the landlocked salmon, the wild rainbows, or depending on who stocks them, the state or a private company stocks the fish. If the meat's orange, it's going to taste generally better and sweeter. Brown trout are good. Brook trout are good. I've eaten them all in the past. Now I really generally only keep rainbow trout, and depending where I am, I will keep Lakers, and steelhead taste amazing. So coho salmon too, oh so good. Rob ate his first coho salmon this year. He caught and ate his first coho, and he says it was insane compared to the king salmon, because the king salmon in Pulaski on the Salmon River, depending if they're a freshie or a zombie, you shouldn't eat the zombie anyway. You shouldn't keep the zombie. But if you keep a fresh king and it's a smaller one, they will taste okay, but they don't really taste as good when you think of salmon. You get a coho salmon and you cook it right. Oh my God, it is amazing. But that is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this podcast of increasing your trout fishing success. If you guys have any comments, leave them down below. Or if you want to get personal with me, send me an email about your personal questions if you don't want to leave them out there. And I'm not talking anything sexual or anything like that, so don't go there, you dirty people. Send me something on fishing or hunting related, or questions about the river or trout or fish or anything like that. All right, I hope you guys have a great day. Get caffeinated, go work out, go fishing, find the fish, learn something new, search articles, sort out your tackle box. I know you guys are neglecting your tackle box. Don't wait until the night before to do it and go through it and get pissed off when 9,000 lures are stuck together. All right. But that is it. Thank you for listening. I am Mike with Obviously Outdoorsman. Thank you for listening to the First Light Talk number 14. Peace, guys. Have a great day.